intellect, it can only operate via what it has available to it. I mean, it's a given, right? So I'm not entirely a proponent of the whole a priori business, because everything you have available for utilization is necessarily outside of just mental grasp. You're going to have to move towards something. So the problem here is that everything we know is going to be processed via interaction. So we call it something a priori, given that we can then move from one bit of knowledge to another, right, via just speculation without any need to actually go in and look. Now, the problem with that is that, well, where did that initial bit of information come from? So where did the inference that 1 from 1, 1 plus 1 equals 2 came from, the combination of items in reality, in relation to us? And as a result, we then, just duplicate and move from that to a larger scale. Right. Though, again, if a priori is just utilizing what we've found out a posteriori, then really what is it other than a posteriori? You're just utilizing what you found out via moving outside of yourself.
Right. Well, it seems like an a posteriori truth is more like rather than it's more like induction rather than deduction, right? Because you're making a judgment based on experience. There's no necessary reason it had to have been that way, but you're just sort of saying that this happens this way because I've experienced it. And the a priori, I think we have to, if we're going to find a ground for these truths, it's got to be in experience also. So, and I think Kant, as an example, tried to do that by grounding numbers and math actually in counting, which is an experience of time itself. Right? So I think and I don't think Kant necessarily completed that task of actually really grounding whatever a priori or self-evident truths might be in our experience and in our embodied experience. That seems to be, that's why I like phenomenology. I'm not sure if you've gotten too much into this. It's sort of an expansion of Kant, so that you don't separate the subjective from the objective. You say that very distinction itself is made after the fact. The fact of experience is somehow not yet divided.
Well, I mean, Kant's categorical imperative was trying to assess things as universal via just speculation. So you take one thing, you kind of maneuver it via experience, and then you try to amplify that to a universality. Well, would you like to be lied to, operate, how it would work out for other people, and then, assess that via some universal law. Again, the problem with that, and why he's been so, butchered on that, is because of the inability to allow the introducing context into the circumstance, and context changes the entire thing. And that's why these assumptions that we can move from these individuals and go universal from it, and this is assessed by a priori. We can just contemplate, and that'll be enough to understand real facts. Well, most people will not accept real facts without some kind of adherence to outside inspection.
Right.
I wanted to read a quote and then get your opinion on it, because I want to get your opinion on Kant, actually, Avi. Act that your principle of action might safely be made a law for the whole world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something to reflect on. Yeah, and I wanted to get, how much of you would you say is Kantian? What did he get right? Where was he good, thumbs up, you do this a lot, and where was he, not so much? Is it like that for you?
I recognize his point there, and I recognize the goal. He really was trying to just make the moral introspection mathematical, right? So you can work it out to be some kind of mathematical system where you take this thing, operate how it would work entirely, and then deduce some actual factual moral law from that. Personally, via moral speculation, I can't do that without assessing context, right? So, lying is always bad isn't going to be a rule that's going to be appropriately applicable because, the killer scenario, etc. Context, reroutes the entire system. It changes it from speculative to pragmatic, and we've already been there. Pragmatism is going to cause problems.
So, Avi, are you saying that you read Kant as trying to ground ethics in some sort of deductive mathematical system?
In a sense, it does seem to be kind of that kind of effort, because when you're trying to just take one set item, utilize that with another set item, and deduce some final rule without the availability for change via context. Well, that's the whole point of it being outside of some mathematical frame.
Right.
If it's mathematical, then context is irrelevant, right? 1 + 1 = 2, regardless of the context.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing here. This is the law. Once you kind of universalize it, and that's it. Context doesn't change that, because it would now re-affect your universal, and then it would cause problems for the whole system. So it seems to be mathematized.
It seems, what you're saying seems to point out that ethics and logic are they intertwine, but they're not completely synonymous. That's why there's these two distinct concepts of these branches of philosophy, and that's all you're kind of pointing out. We need to honor some of those differences, and it complexifies the issue. There's distinct categories there for a reason.
I think at first I kind of was disagreeing with what you had said, Avi, but now that you've explained it, I see where you're coming from. It seems I was going to disagree, because Kant would say that morality, his beliefs concerning morality are based on faith alone. He realizes that natural science basically says the universe is determined. To believe in free human beings, you have to completely bracket science and just have faith. That your experience is actually true to life, and not an illusion produced by evolution that has designed your brain to work in a certain way. So
his conception disallows, though, for varying moral rules, and that's exactly why it's trying to become more mathematically precise, because no outside ideal can now break this, right? So it's the whole scientific method business, right? If you utilize this particular set of rules, then you'll be able to part the good from the bad, right? That kind of thing, and that's what he seems to be doing. If you utilize this rule, take it, will it to be universal, and if you can do that without a contradiction, it becomes a categorical imperative. You've now completely ridded the world of countless other ideas that could have been moral if you'd allowed for context, but his method doesn't, so it's mathematized.
Okay. Since we're talking about ethics, in some sense, I want to read a quote from Abraham Lincoln. He says, "When I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. And that's my religion." That's kind of a very subjective, relativist type of position. Mm-hmm. How much of that is safe, and how much of it is overboard, from your experience, Jasper?
Well, I mean, I don't know what he means bigger picture there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything that would allow for expansion of that? Because that seems ridiculously kind of, quote mining. I don't even know what the hell he's talking about.
Just imagine me with a top hat, looking really serious and staring you in the eyes, and about to.
Well, it's basically an emotionalist, or emotionalism, I think is what it's called. A field of ethics, where you say, the good is what makes me feel good, the bad is what makes me feel bad.
As in, you should know what's, and trust that.
This is the complete opposite of probably Gary's objective moral philosophy. Morality based on emotion rather than in opposition to it.
Right.
I guess they're both kind of pointing at the same, like common sense. You should know better that this is suffering or this is, but it seems that way. But when things, in actuality, it's just much more complex, and you should know becomes. Yeah.
That does seem pretty close to hedonism, though, except it just exchanges the words pleasure and pain for good and bad. I don't. I'm trying to draw where the distinction is really, and I'm not finding it. At least not in any kind of real, distinct way.
Right.
Lincoln was a hedonist.
Right. So I think what would your ethical foundations be, Avi? Where do you begin trying to solve moral problems? Because you seem to have rejected Kant's attempt, right? It's not based on some law or some duty that just is the way it is. You've got to discover it yourself somehow, right?
Well, I personally recognize that there's no moral universal, and that nothing is good or bad at any point in time without reference to some person. So, right, good and bad are not existent without the capacity to judge it, and that's always going to be emotional, and as a result, it's always going to vary between individuals.
Gary's tearing his hair out, by the way, right now.
he is going to flip out, but for my personal taste, I mean, it really does wind down to just don't be a dick. I mean, it's that simple. Like, if just don't be a dick,
how do you know
and
what
you're more.
Oh man, I'm out then.
But how do you know what being a dick is? Isn't that also a subjective?
You see, that I find to be more kind of commonsensical, right? So when the guy walks up and slaps the woman across the face for no reason, everyone kind of turns and goes, "That guy's a dick," right? And it's that kind of thing. But
yeah,
I mean,
what if
I have
a bit more video? So are you a dick all of a sudden, or is it just?
I have it a bit more well placed than that, but I don't know if we have time for me to go into an entire moral argument. Though I do have another one that I've come with recently.